welcome to the studio at That Nerd Show. I'm Marcus Blake, joined with Alex Moore. We are doing virtual film festival interviews from the Lake County Film Festival. And we are speaking with director Joshua Tsui about the movie Insert Coin. And this is right up our alley. As you know, we are huge gamers, so we got a lot to talk about with this documentary.
Awesome.
I just wanted to start out by saying, fantastic documentary. There was a lot that I did not remember about that. Alex and I were actually texting back and forth about some of the things that you had presented. So what was the idea behind this? I mean, why do a documentary about this era of arcade games?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you think about it, it was like the last hurrah of classic arcade gaming. It was basically in the 90s. This is before the consoles really became super powerful, more powerful than the arcade machines themselves. Like back in the day, the arcade machines were like at the top of the food chain when it came to just pure raw power, graphics, and everything. And so, the 90s, Midway Games, based in Chicago, was emerging as the powerhouse. There were Williams before that, and they had a lot of success in the 80s, obviously with like Defender, Robotron, and those games. But there was a bit of a lull. And so the 90s was all about like this resurgence and how, Midway basically turned their graphics hardware into these powerful video machines where you can have actors be in the game and just kind of take realism to another level. And it changed, it changed the video game industry after that. So even after the arcades died, what they did in that era really powered a lot of the games that we play to this day.
Well, and you do talk about, the original Mortal Kombat and just how groundbreaking it was.
Yeah.
Alex, you and I were commenting about the difference between Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam. You said we were pleasantly surprised by how popular that NBA Jam was, a little bit more, I guess, I don't know the right words I'm looking for. Alex, help me out.
We all knew that these were popular arcades at the time, but I think most of us have bigger memories of Mortal Kombat because of the controversy surrounding it. Whereas NBA Jam, I think, was kind of on its own. There wasn't really any competition for it. So in hindsight, it makes sense that it was more popular. But I had no idea that it was that much more popular than Mortal Kombat. Yeah,
that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't realize that because the difference, both were obviously hugely popular, but where Mortal Kombat was popular for, obviously for its like, the violence for back in the day, got a lot of attention for that. NBA Jam was kind of, like sneaking off on the side. People were, people who normally don't play video games were playing NBA Jam. So it had a massively broad audience, which was really impressive. I was just talking to somebody about how back in the day, if you went into, like in some of the cities, they would have these Aladdin's Castle arcades, that were owned by Bally at the time. They were in business districts. And I remember going by some of them and seeing businessmen playing NBA Jam and just packed, and playing it, during their lunch breaks or on their way to their train stations and things like that. So these are, it hit a lot. It was a very casual sports game, and it just was always popular for a very long time. And in the quote in the film is that it made $1 billion in 1 year. That's 3 times the amount of Jurassic Park the same year it came out, and nobody was paying attention.
Sorry about the beeping there. I think that's on our end.
I was wondering, is that me? Is that my burrito in the microwave?
Turning a coin.
You're right. It's like we did that coin. We didn't plan the ambiance. It just anyway. I think it's interesting that you two talk about again the resurgence, but again when PlayStation came out, we started doing the disc related consoles and stuff that I kind of took away from the arcades.
Yeah.
What do you feel like? Because now there's a resurgence of arcades again, of classic arcades. It seems like we go through these periods no matter what the console wars are.
Yeah.
What do you attribute to that?
Yeah, I think it's the old, like every 20 years there's this nostalgic thing that pops up, and so like out of nowhere people who were kids, let's say in the 90s, now they're adults, and they're probably at the age where they're starting to think about how fun it was to be a kid again. They probably have more responsibilities now and everything.
Right.
But now, but the difference is that now they have some money, so now they can go out and buy, a retro console system, or they can go to a barcade and play a bunch of games and have drinks and things like that. And so it's a generational thing. And also, like now, it's kind of interesting. Now mobile devices are really powerful gaming machines, and a lot of arcade games happen to port over to mobile systems or handheld systems really well, for that short burst of gameplay that you play, on the commute to work or whatever. And so I think a lot of that just started rolling in. But yeah, I just like for myself, it's 20 plus years later after Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, and you start thinking about, like, I have a lot of responsibilities at home. I have kids and everything. How do I, do I really want to spend 60 hours playing a game, or can I just go in and do, hit a couple of quick matches on Mortal Kombat, go in and out, and then, take care of the rest of my life. So I think it's a combination of all those.
Alex always does a little bit more prep work on stuff than I do. So I know you've done your homework, Alex. I'm going to let you take the next question.
One of the things I liked when I was watching the documentary was when it got to the making of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you were showing some side-by-side comparisons of the shots that were taken in this, on set, on stage, and then showing it side by side with the games. Was this something that was already available, like on some other source, or was this an attempt on your end to kind of splice that together to show the before and after shots? Because I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, no, that was something I created for the film. So there's been, I had access to all of the raw footage from the Mortal Kombat sessions, and and some of these things have been shown on YouTube or leaked here and there and stuff. And it was important for me to not just take raw archival data and just dump it in and make a documentary out of it. It was really about, like, contextualizing things. So in the case of the Mortal Kombat footage, it's like, all right, here's Johnny Cage doing his moves, but how, but now let's see what it looked like in the game and how it changed. If you in that segment, you see them doing all kinds of moves as fast as possible. There's a tons of frames of videos and such, but in the game itself, it's like a punch is like 3 frames, just to get that speed and everything. And I wanted to show how much also the artist would touch up and doctor up the images to make them look as good as possible. If you look at those VHS grabs of the actors, they're not very clean. They're really grimy videos and stuff. And one of the unsung heroes of these games are the artists, the video artists, who went in frame by frame, touched up every single image to make them look as realistic as possible, given the constraints that we had.
Right. One thing I want to touch on is the segment about making the Terminator 2 video game.
Yeah.
Which, again, Alex and I were texting back and forth. I never knew Linda Hamilton had a twin sister.
Right.
That was
news to me.
Like, really?
Yeah. I think that's one of the funnest things about making this documentary was that, I knew a lot of the overall story about, about Midway Games, but these little micro details that I just thought were really fun. Yeah. Who knew that Linda Hamilton had a twin sister, or who knew that, Robert Patrick thought that being in the game was a bigger deal than being in the movie itself.
Right.
Just things like that just cracked me up.
And that's, talking about the arcade area, that's another thing where you were able to do a lot more, and especially with, and as you pointed out, that's the precursor to motion capture, to what James Cameron would use to do Avatar and what everybody uses now.
Yeah.
But I don't know about Aerosmith, though. I do remember that game.
you gotta put this into context. This is like the early to mid '90s. I mean, Aerosmith was on a tear. I mean, that the new album that came out, I think it was like #1. I mean, they were really coming back at that time, and so it really illustrated how, after the success of Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, how people really wanted to work with Midway. So when the call went out to Aerosmith, they're like, oh, these guys did Mortal Kombat. They're gonna make us look awesome. We're gonna come in, and but then it's like the goofiest game ever made. It's when I talk to a lot of people, they say that it's like the most 90s game you can think of. You know, when you're when your weapon is a CD, you know, it's like, come on, that's, you know, no, like my kids look at a CD. Yeah, my kids look at a CD and they're like, what is this? Like, what is this for? You know?
All right, I'm going to let Alex take the next question on here with all of his prep work.
I was intrigued by the fact that James Cameron has such a positive, surprising reaction when he went in and saw what was going through the making of the video game. In your estimation, do you think that this was a common trend with directors when they went in and had a chance to see the process of gaming, and maybe they had a little more respect for it at the time?
You know, it's hard to say because, you know, we don't have a huge sample of, you know, of that type of of working with a bunch of film directors. But I would say that in Cameron's case, I think it's not surprising because, you know, the stories I've heard of James Cameron is that he's always been really geeky. He loves getting into things and learning how to do new processes and everything. And so, you know, at the time when they were doing T2, you know, computer graphics were pretty new, and the process we were doing was considered state of the art at the time. And so I think when they, you know, when the two mediums met up, it seemed to make sense, and he was just kind of really blown away by, like, wow, you guys can digitize stuff just like we do. And so that, I think he himself was a little different. Now, like Paul W.S. Anderson, the director of the Mortal Kombat movies, you know, he's another good example of, he got it. Like, because it doesn't state it in the documentary, but in interviewing him, he talked about how before he even became the director of Mortal Kombat, he was obsessed with the game. So he was in London playing the game constantly and everything. And so when he came in, he had a respect for the franchise already. And so that's why he was able to make such a good, fun movie, which I still think is the best video game movie ever made. Even though the effects are a little cheesy now and such, you know, it really captured what gamers wanted to see without, you know, dumbing it down too much for the mainstream audience.
Although I'm being a Mortal Kombat fan, I do kind of want that NC-17 version. The way it's meant to be.
Could have been a director's cut or something.
Yeah, somewhere else. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, there's the new Mortal Kombat movies coming out, I think, next year. So we'll see. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much they can tolerate with that.
Right. Okay, we're gonna ask you two questions. First of all, what is your all-time favorite classic video game? What is that go-to game for you?
Oh, that's easy. It's NBA Jam. Mortal Kombat 2, I think, is a very, and it's not just because, you know, I worked at the company and such, but the Mortal Kombat 2 comes a very close second. But NBA Jam, it's like I was saying before, you know, I can go to any arcade, or I have it fired up at home, and people come in and play, and it's super easy to teach them how to play, and people get super competitive really fast, and they get the game instantly. So I think that's fantastic. And then but I like, you know, I like the beat 'em ups like Streets of Rage, you know, just for pure mindless fun.
Yeah, I was commenting to our staff because I got the Cobra Kai game a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is literally just Streets of Rage with Lingo from the Cobra Kai. So it's fun though, it is. I've played this before, and Streets of Rage is find that. Yeah, for me.
I'm sorry,
for me, my classic game is always going to be Double Dragon, the original on Nintendo. And I know, Alex, what was yours again?
If we go back to the 8-bit era, it's got to be Super Mario Brothers 3. But at the arcade, you know, I just loved playing Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter 2. It was kind of between those two, back and forth, really. So
yeah, I mean, the arcade fighting game experience, you just can't beat it because you're just there with a complete stranger, and you end up, you know, you trash talk, you probably end up being buddies with that person, even though you're sworn enemies, you know.
Well, we do our best in trash talking when, you know, we're all playing on the same console. But you're right, it doesn't take place of an old school arcade, and I'm glad that people are bringing it back because now it's more fun. We're adults, we can drink while we trash.
Our gameplay gets worse because we're drinking, but it's more fun, you know.
Right. All right. So we always, again, like to ask our filmmakers a very nerdy question.
Okay.
And this one is for you. It is, if you could have a weapon of choice or a superpower from within the new nerd universe, or even the gaming universe, to fight the forces of evil, what would you choose?
I would say the first thing that popped up in my mind, and I'm not sure if it's the best choice, but is the smart bomb from Defender.
Oh,
It just obliterates everything on screen at once.
nice, nice. Yeah,
I
that's
need
all.
I need more I need more of that in my life.
And by the way, one quick thing before we let you go. Again, love the Fight Night round disc behind you.
Oh,
Alex and
nice.
I are probably the biggest boxing fans on our
Oh
staff.
wow.
So
Nice.
we're always squaring off with each other in boxing. What do you think is the best version of the Fight Night round series?
Oh,
I go 4 personally.
Which one?
I'm 4.
4. Okay. So this is a completely biased answer because I was the art director on Fight Night Round 3. So I love that one for a couple of reasons. It's a really fun game. I think 4 is fantastic too.
Right.
But Round 3, I think it kind of ushered in the gameplay that 4 capitalized on and improved on.
Yeah.
The graphics, again, I'm going to be biased on it, but we pushed the graphics of the Xbox 360 at that time to its limit, and we felt that we really did a great job with it. And it was a great experience working on it. The team really was one of the most talented teams I've ever worked with. I was like super humbled to be a part of that. And so yeah.
Well, we did
That's
research, looked you up a little bit, and I wanted to ask you about it because I knew you worked on the game. And like I said, we're huge fans of that series.